Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Jimmy, and we are doing the Meet the Candidate series. Thank you so much for joining us. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest, a climate activist. He is a climate expert, ladies and gentlemen, among other things. Quentin Zondervan is serving his second term on the city council. He is a longtime climate activist, nonprofit leader, and first-generation immigrant from Suriname. He has been an advocate for Cambridge's unhoused community and is committed to bringing people together to address our housing crisis, the omnipresent threat of climate change, and ensure safe streets for cyclists and pedestrians. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Quentin Zondervan. Hello, Quentin. How are you?
I'm good, Jimmy. Thanks. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for running for another term on the city council. I have to ask, Quentin, I ask everybody in the middle of this pandemic, why are you running for another term?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, one of the things that the COVID crisis has laid bare is that we are not doing enough justice in Cambridge, and we need to do more because the current situation is literally life-threatening to too many people.
For example, what do you think in Cambridge could we be doing that would reduce the life-threatening situation for people?
Well, there are many things. I would start with affordable housing and stabilizing people's living situation. We have too many people who are living on the street and are not being provided with a safe place to shelter, which again, during a pandemic is life-threatening.
Right. Quentin, I walk all the time. During the pandemic, I went out for my long walks at night, and I would go up to Harvard Square and I'd come back to Central Square, and the only people that are out basically were largely the unhoused population, sleeping in doorways, sleeping on benches, sleeping, and it's still I walk down to, I walked, I think it's Green Street. I see them in the doorway of the methadone clinic. I think that's what it is. And it's just like, what do you think the solution should be? And I asked a couple of people one day, I was actually a young couple in sleeping bags on the steps of the church. I said, why are you guys sleeping in sleeping bags? Why aren't you in a shelter? And they said, well, there aren't any shelters that take people in Cambridge, or they could have been Greater Boston for that matter, who aren't under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So if you just don't have a place to go, that's where you end up, a lot of these people. And what do you think the solution is?
Well, we definitely don't have enough beds. And during the pandemic, the initial phases of it, I advocated strongly with the city manager to create additional space, rent some hotels, unused dormitories. The manager refused to do that, but did create a temporary shelter at War Memorial, and that was later made more permanent at the Spalding facility on Cambridge Street. And I was able to work with another nonprofit, Solutions at Work, to create a separate shelter, mostly state-funded, on Green Street. But it's not enough, and we need to spend more money to provide more shelter for more people and make it safe, non-congregate, and provide people with the services and the help that they need.
Right. And Quentin, it runs into this, I've often thought out of exasperation sometimes, I said, you know what, should it be even legal to sleep in a doorway? Do you know what I mean? Should it be legal to sleep on the stairs of a public building? And is there the appetite anywhere in the city for, and I don't want to say tough, but I mean love in the extreme sense of like, look, we want you to survive and we want you to go to another level in your life, but you got to get out of the doorway.
Well, we don't want to make it illegal. We want to make it so that nobody needs to do that because they have a safe place to stay. And one of the other things that I've been working on really hard is the HEART proposal for an alternative crisis response, which came from the Black response and is a community-based public safety response that would provide people with the help they need through trained community members who are paid to do this work, but who are not social workers, they're not mandated reporters, they're not connected to the police or the carceral system, who can help each other, because that's really what we need. We need people in the community to be paid to help each other. A lot of these people who are sleeping on the street, it's not because that's what they want to be doing. It's because they're not getting the help that they need in order to be safe.
Hmm. I so you're talking about people that are paid to intervene. Cool.
Right.
Okay.
In a helpful way, yes.
Right. And I know just from my relationship with the people I talk to them all the time. Some people, and this is another discussion, I don't want to use up all your time, but what are we going to do with people who don't want to move? That's like a big deal, but we don't have to, I want to talk about other things as well. So you mentioned housing, and you mentioned, where are you in housing? I know there are different coalitions in the city. Who do you support, or who supports you in terms of housing, and why?
Well, one of the things that I've done this term is propose a $500 million bond to build 1,000 units of limited equity affordable homeownership to make up for anti-Black discrimination in the housing market. These units would go to first-generation home buyers. And, it's clear that we need a lot more affordable housing in and around our city to meet the need. I've been endorsed by the Residents Alliance, Our Revolution, and other organizations. But nobody has the answer. We all need to come together and figure out, how do we use the city's vast resources? I mean, we have $200 million in free cash. We have $65 million in COVID relief funds from the Biden administration. We have a lot of money. How do we best put it to use? We have AAA bond rating that the manager is very proud of. So let's use that to get some bonds and build some housing for people who need it.
Right. Are you optimistic, should you be reelected, that there would be that type of unity and cooperation on the council to reach happy mediums in terms of housing?
Well, it depends who else is elected. But the next council will be hiring a new city manager, because this manager is retiring in July next year. So that's a rare opportunity to look for a city manager who shares those progressive values and will prioritize justice, affordable housing, climate action, racial justice, all these issues that we really desperately need to work on.
Right. When you said that the housing to go to well, let's go to the climate, because I know we only have a couple of minutes. Tell me about your climate proposals for the city. What should the city be doing in terms to reduce our carbon footprint and to create a more, climate-friendly city?
Thanks, Jimmy. So I've proposed a Green New Deal for Cambridge, which is a very specific proposal that would charge large commercial buildings, new buildings, for the greenhouse gases that they are going to emit over their lifetime, and then use those monies to reduce emissions elsewhere in Cambridge and to create green jobs for low-income and minority communities who've been left out of the innovation economy in Cambridge for far too long. So this approach uses the revenues that we can get from these buildings to reduce our emissions and to do economic justice in our city at the same time.
Right. Tell me, is there any appetite, or is this on anybody's agenda, to use public buildings that the city already owns, and, for example, solar panels on the roofs of public buildings? That would seem like there's not a lot of resistance. You're not dealing with people's parking spaces or anything. It's the roof. Nobody's up there. Right. Is that something that would be effective or appealing to you?
Absolutely. And in fact, we're already doing it through the city's Community Choice Energy Program. We are taking 0.2 of a penny on every kilowatt hour and putting that into a savings account, which already has, I believe, close to $2 million in it, that we are able to use to install solar panels on public buildings and elsewhere as well.
That's already been being done.
That's already in effect.
Okay. And like, for example, the schools, I would think it would be a great teaching moment for you got all these grammar schools and the high school, and the kids know, wow, there's solar panels on the roof. It would be an educational thing as well.
Right. We have solar panels on the library, on the high school, on the new King Open School that was completely rebuilt and is net zero ready. And we will be putting solar panels on the Tobin School as well as geothermal, which is another way to reduce the energy that is consumed by the building.
Okay. Now, we got you. We're down to closing statements. Please, and just in your closing statement, maybe you can allude to the fact of, will we find peaceful coexistence between cars and buses and people and bikes and outside dining?
I think we can. I think we will. I was in Central Square recently, and it was beautiful. There's people outside, and they're enjoying the outdoors. They're enjoying each other's company, and the traffic seems to be just fine. So I think we can continue doing that forever now. We've learned during COVID that we can exist outside and coexist with traffic, no problem. Cambridge really is doing well compared to the rest of the world, but compared to where we need to be, we have a lot more work to do. And in particular, we need to invest in justice. One of the proposals I made this term is for a Racial Justice and Equity Commission to implement reparations for slavery and restitution for the war on drugs, as well as to dismantle the systemic racism in our city that continues to oppress Black and Brown people to this very day. So there's a lot more work to be done. I have a very ambitious agenda, as you've heard, and I would love your number one vote on or before November 2nd to continue this work. And you can learn more at votequinton.com.
Votequinton.com. Quentin Zondervan, thank you so much for joining us today. I will see you out on the campaign trail. I will see you in Central Square as I eat, as I bike, as I walk, and as I drive down Mass Ave. And I will find you as an ally when I tried to park.
Maybe.
Thank you so much, Quentin. Best of luck, continued success, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Okay, bye-bye.